This is Fragments of Silicon, wishing you a super March 10th.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me, as always, is the regular crew. Let's get to the news. Galax, why don't you start us off this week?
Not too much going on special around here. The weather's being kind of annoyingly warm for super early spring / late winter, although it's supposed to get cold again this weekend. I can't think of anything particularly interesting that's going on, I don't think. Oh, yeah, I finally saw a doctor, and I have a prescription for my blood pressure that I can pick up soon, so hopefully that'll reduce it enough that I can, work on it uh, confidently without, worrying about shit. Um, Video game-wise, the game I'm reviewing this week is one that is part of the intended experience is learning how to play, and I'm been tried that a few times, wrestling with it, have not had any successful runs yet, but we'll see how that goes. I think the format I'm playing it on is part of the problem, but we'll have more on that this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's all about it.
All right. Patty, why don't you go?
Um, Overall, the week's been fairly quiet. I saw my neurologist on Monday. We're trying a new medicine for the headaches, and I got my, shots in my legs to make them not feel like they're trying to rip themselves apart. And, today I had shots in my back to hopefully get that pain under control. And as far as various acquisitions go, my Digivice version complete finally showed up from Japan. So
Oh,
that,
cool.
yep.
Sweet.
I think I'm only missing 2 Digimon now on it. At least of the main cast.
Yeah, they usually have a couple of bonuses in addition,
Yeah.
I think.
And I also, while we were at Walmart today, I picked up a Razer Kaishi. It's a controller that works on your phone, but instead of Bluetooth, it plugs into the USB Type-C port, and it works wired. I mean, not bad for $40. Hooray for clearance. And yeah, we've still been having fun on the Switch and whatnot. But I guess the biggest news that happened over the week is I finally have replaced my monitor. Gone
That's
is that
good.
gone is that 27-inch TV, and it's been replaced with a 32-inch actual ultra-wide monitor. And now I can see the chat. You all
See, I
cannot escape me now.
yeah. See, I have a second screen that handles that.
Yeah, well, I don't have enough outlets for a second screen, and seeing how I don't feel like doing electrical.
I mean, my second screen is my phone.
Fair.
Do you have I mean, power strips are usually fairly cheap, or can your house not handle that?
I have about as big power strip as I can get in this room, and if I were to try to put more in, I would blow a breaker.
Never fun.
Yeah. But at least this has a snap window feature that kind of emulates having 2 screens. Though it's a little buggy sometimes, but it's also better than nothing. And yeah, I guess that's it from me.
Well, it's your go, Twilight.
All right. Well, first off, I have gotten my first COVID vaccine, the Moderna, as it turns out it was. I actually didn't have to go to that pharmacy. Actually, health department called work and was asking us. I was asking if any of us there wanted to get it from them, and plenty of us volunteer and well signed up for it. And yeah, I got the first dose of the Moderna. I at least for this one, I rarely ever hear about anybody having any problems with the first dose. I didn't have any problems out of it. It made my arm feel weird for a few hours after getting it, and I mean, I was fine otherwise.
I'm waiting for the Johnson and Johnson to become more widespread because if I can help it, I want to do one dose.
I can understand that.
Especially
Apparently,
since it's like weeks in between shots.
yeah, about a month is how long you have to wait.
Like,
Yeah,
I think, just if I'm gonna be waiting, just wait for the one shot.
yeah. I heard that it's actually available here in Kentucky right now. Neighbors of mine have actually already gotten it. One of them got through just fine with no side effects. The other apparently spent the night with a cold or something like that. Yeah, but yeah. Otherwise, they were doing just fine. It was apparently I hadn't even heard about it, but anyway, on with my news though. Yeah, the other thing is, well, I decided not to move from my current um, abode into the next door house that was being offered to me if I was interested in it. Well, I was interested in it, but I decided I was fine with where I live right now. That one is that.
Moving is a pain.
It can be a pain, yeah. And I would miss having a porch, and I like having a porch right now.
There.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so that's gonna go to somebody else. Landlord's still looking for somebody right now. They're see, um, I think there's somebody who's interested in it. I'm not sure yet. She was over there with somebody else today. Not sure what was going on over there. I was at my mother's place, helping with. I went to my mother's place to help with moving in a new love seat that she got from a friend of hers. It's kind of used, but it's still in pretty good condition. Just needs some cleaning. So I helped her get that into the washroom. Some people might find that be an odd place for a love seat, but it's her washroom, so I probably did used to have one. That was apparently well before I was born, though, and I think it must have belonged to my grandparents who used to own that place. So, let's see now. Besides that, in gaming, well, me and some friends started playing Payday 2. One of them was getting tired of getting our butts kicked in Left 4 Dead 2, so they wanted to move on to something else for a while. So we've been having fun with that until we got to one of the DLC heists and having some trouble with that. Well, it was actually because we was on overkill mode, and one of them kept insisting on continuing with overkill mode, and we're eventually like, let's move on to another difficulty. So still taking some getting used to that playing that game, and yeah, me, Mac, and Kira are still doing the AP AP yeah the game sessions on Monday on Mac's channel, and that'll be it.
Okay. Yes, it's my go. Let's see. Well, it's been I won't say unseasonably cold, but a cold snap has been going through for the past week, though apparently that's going to end into the weekend. Let's see. Had to go over to my mother's and help her out with some stuff because she fell and twisted some limbs.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's not fun, especially since she's visibly hobbling. Like, she swears she's getting better.
That's good.
Let's see. My cat is being a very aggressive cuddler right now, like as cats are wanting to do. And yeah, I suppose that's it for my news. Not anything particularly amazing this week. Anyway, so merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is Vance Baryn of Stand Up Software.
Hello. I did notice that the name of the company is not correct either. Sorry, I didn't catch that before. Stand Off Software, OFF, not UP.
Ah,
Ah, that's unfortunate.
I
That's all
got
right.
it.
Yeah, thankfully we can edit mid show. Like sometimes errors like that happen. Anyway,
Yeah, I immediately noticed my name misspelled, but then I didn't catch that until just after it had started. But
anyway, while that's getting sorted out, um, right. So how we like to start things is we like to get to know the person behind the studio games and whatnot, and we do this by asking this particular question: what got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
um, well, I guess I have been playing video games for quite for as long as I have had knowledge of them. Right? I mean, from childhood. Grew up in the 80s as a child, so video games certainly existed. Computers existed. We had a Commodore 64 and played lots of games on that, and um, and also just wrote games on it using the visual using Commodore 64 Basic. I would make text adventure games just for the fun of it. So got into making games pretty early on, almost about the same time I got into playing games because I was always into making things. I was writing stories, right? I like to read books, so I wrote stories. I like to play games, so I made games. So it just always has been something that I have done, playing games and making games. And so, when I've just been doing that for so long, and then eventually, I it became my job at some point several years back. But I was making games long before um, there were I was making any commercially available stuff pretty much my whole life. So yeah, I guess that's the story.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fair enough. And what was the particular nudge to make, commercial software?
I don't know. That's what you do, right? When you make stuff, you want people to play it, and you can give it away for free. And I've done that too, right? There's lots of games that I have made throughout the years that I just provided for free, and there are still games that I make that are free. On Usually those are on itch because you have to pay to get your game on Steam, so I don't put the free games on there. But on itch.io, I have free games. I have game jam games, but at some point, I just decided maybe I should try to make higher quality games that are commercially viable. So that's where I went from there. Kind of just a natural extension from making games in the first place.
Fair enough, I suppose. And um, so was the Unicorn Dungeon of the Sir Tifle's? Is it Tifle or Tifle?
Typhel.
Sir Tifle's Tale series. Was that the first commercial game, or did you do something before that?
That was really the first commercial game. I'm trying to think back if there were. I mean, if commercial means that I charged people money for it, then I believe that is the first commercial game. I've had some pretty successful games in the past. In the 90s, I had a multiplayer online game that I wrote and had a fair number of players, but it was free to play. And I'm trying to think. I had a bunch of Facebook games when that was a thing that people did, was play Facebook games. Made a bunch of games on there, but those they were also free. I didn't even have any monetization at all. So I think if I recall correctly, it's been many years, but I believe that Unicorn Dungeon was the first commercial game. Yep.
And what made you go with a point and click adventure game for this endeavor?
Well, I mean that's my go-to genre. I've always loved adventure games. Like I said at the beginning, I started out playing text adventures on the Commodore 64 way back as a child, and moved on to the graphical adventures that were coming out. Sierra, big fan of Sierra. Did not play many of the LucasArts games at the time, but was a big fan of Sierra. I bought and played any Sierra game that I could find, and my parents would pay for to get me. and, and yeah, just fell in love with that genre of game and has always been my primary genre. I'm interested in a lot of different kinds of games as well, and Standoff Software is certainly going to make some other branch out after this series is finished, which is there are 2 more games left in this series,
Mhm.
and maybe try to go in some different directions. But point and click adventures is where really I got my start in gaming for the most part, and where my heart is primarily in gaming. I just love everything about them. The story aspect and the puzzle solving detective-y aspect. Even if you're not a detective character, it's all kind of detective work. You have to find the clues to piece together what's going on. It's just a really fun, good time, and then a an exciting story, an interesting story to go along with it. So it seems to me point and click adventure games are the full package of game.
Like, it can be, depending on what you're going
Well,
for.
well, yeah, I guess if you're into action, that's probably not the full package for someone who wants action, because there tends to not be a lot of arcadey action stuff. So yeah, you have to look elsewhere for that. That's true.
I mean, once again, it depends. Like the Indiana Jones games had action, and
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, that's true.
but yeah, it's like more often than not, if you're playing a point and click adventure game, it's probably going to be for puzzly
Sure.
reasons
Yeah.
or
And Space Quest had the infamous skimmer section where you had to avoid the rocks and ride the skimmer through
right.
the up to find the bar. So there's stuff like that, and you'll
Yeah.
see in my games when you play them. If you haven't, I don't know if you have or not, but um, in my games they are a mix of genres. You can really see my kind of overall broad love of many genres of games through these games, because every game is a hybrid of different types of games. So there are roguelike elements, RPG elements, stealth elements, all kinds of stuff that you generally don't find in adventure games in these games. So you can see that as well.
Right. I mean, there's also the Quest for Glory series.
Right. Yeah, that's an RPG hybrid. Yeah, loved those. Loved those games.
Yeah. I mean, by a staggering coincidence, we talked to the creators of that last week.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good people. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, and what sorts of games have you integrated into these particular adventure games?
So the first one is a sort of dungeon crawler game. I I want to say rogue-like because it is very much like Rogue, but it is not rogue-like in the way that a lot of people think of rogue-like these days. It's not procedurally generated in any way. Everything is the same every time you go in, but the gameplay, the tile-based, turn-based movement, and the way that you fight is rogue-like. It is a rogue-like dungeon crawler that is not procedurally generated. That's,
And
go ahead.
yeah, and how does the adventure game stuff integrate with that genre?
There are two separate sections of the game. So you have one section of the game that is in 3D and is adventure game mechanics, and then you go to a different section and you have a 2D tile based dungeon crawler, and you move back and forth between them to complete the game. And it's like that in all the games. So in the second one, it's an RPG, sort of Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy style RPG game, and it's the same thing. There's that section where when you're traveling across the overworld, it's all 2D with random battles, a la the early Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy, and then in town and other locations, it becomes 3D and adventure gamey.
Right. And
Oh, that's the third game. Right, I said the second game. That's the third game. The second game has a stealth section where which is also 2D, and you have to wind your way around the castle ruins and avoid zombies and other obstacles stealthily. And Alien Function has the hacking and OS simulation. So it's a simulated OS with hacking mechanics and other things to do on the simulated computer. So those are the four games so far, and the alternate modes in them besides the point and click adventure.
hmm, uh, did any of those present difficulties in integrating with the adventure game stuff?
Um, Difficulty is hard to define. I suppose. I mean, not really, because I'm using Unity. You make a different scene, and you can make every scene a completely different kind of game. As a difficulty as in, would it have been a lot easier if I didn't do that? Sure, of course it would. Right, focusing on doing one thing rather than two things at once would certainly have been easier, but I think it would have made for less interesting games, in my opinion. And as far as what I was going for, I'm not saying that other games that don't integrate other games are not interesting. I don't think that at all. I like a large number of adventure games that are just straightforward adventure games. But for what I was going for, I really wanted that aspect, and so I think it is and will continue to be worth the work to do it.
And what are you going for in terms of these adventure game hybrids?
I'm going for an absurdist style. Um, Sort of, I'm inspired by things like in the music world. I'm also a musician, big into music. Things like Mr. Bungle or John Zorn, or Tom Waits to an extent, that really take a wide breadth of styles and put it into the same piece. And coming from that on the music side, my band is the same way. When we write songs, we put many different styles. One song might have jazz, metal, and funk in different parts of it all throughout it. So I'm really kind of putting that aesthetic into a game.
That is certainly interesting. Now, when you say absurdist, is that absurdist like comedy or just in
Yeah,
general?
yeah. One thing that I have started shying away from doing is calling them comedies, but they are comedies for sure. Objectively so. However, they're not the sort of point and click comedy that a lot of people expect when they go into a point and click comedy. They want something like, or they think of, not necessarily want, they think of something like Day of the Tentacle or um, Sam and Max, those very kind of silly, punny comedy. That's what people think of when they think of point and click adventure comedy. And the games are not like that at all. They derive their comedy more from extremely bizarre situations, absurd situations, mismatched things just being mismatched and a little off. So it's not that sort of zany, punny comedy. It's more, I don't know how to describe it exactly. It's
Python-esque?
yeah, certainly inspired by sort of Monty Python, by Firesign Theater, that sort of thing. That it's just it makes so little sense that it's funny in a lot of ways. I mean, there is a cohesive story throughout all of the games and characters and all that kind of stuff, but you have things like you can see on the trailer that's playing right now. You're in a medieval dungeon, but you have a plastic toy claw in your inventory. You can see when you just looked at the inventory there in the trailer. Um, that kind of thing, just stuff doesn't particularly conform to what you would expect it to, given the setting. So I do a lot of playing with expectations. So in the medieval setting, in a fantasy medieval setting, people have certain expectations of what will happen, what kinds of things that we'll encounter. And instead, you encounter entirely different sorts of situations and objects and things than you might expect.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, but I know what absurdist stuff is. You know, yeah, it's not maybe seen too much in adventure games per se, but it's not an unknown either.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's taken from, a lot of other media. You mentioned, Monty Python, things like Firesign Theater, things like, and the music that I mentioned, all of that just sort of avant-garde, absurdist sort of stuff. That's the aesthetic that I'm going for with it.
Right.
Yeah.
And now, what does this game series have in terms of like adventure game puzzles?
Well, lots of them. I'm not entirely sure how to answer the question. It has lots of adventure game puzzles of
Okay,
various kinds.
I guess to delineate further, are they inventory puzzles? Are they logic puzzles? Um,
Yes. there are inventory puzzles, there are logic puzzles. Um, yeah,
mhm.
I try not to make the puzzles boring and repetitive. So there are a wide variety. There are dialogue puzzles where you have to find the information and say the right things to the right people. Logic puzzles where you have to. There's a logic puzzle in Unicorn Dungeon. There's several of them in Alien Function. I think Poltergeist Treasure has something that could be called a logic puzzle. Um, where you gather various pieces of information and you have to work out what must be the solution if all of these premises are true. Um, so yeah, I try to diversify things. I want to make the game interesting and dynamic, so it runs the gambit in what kinds of puzzles I include.
Okay. And so there are 4 games currently.
Yep.
When did Alien Function release?
That was January 21st.
Okay, so it just came out.
Yes.
That's handy. Um, and what's going on in the latest chapter of this series?
As in the one that just released, Alien Function.
Yes.
So, not to give away too much of the plot of the game, because there's a bit of a mystery, so I don't want to give it all away. But the first 3 games were set in a fantasy realm. Your main character is a knight who is on a quest to bring a unicorn, to find a unicorn, which he does in the first game, and then bring that unicorn back to the king. At the end of the 3rd game, you last saw him flying off in a balloon with the unicorn on his way back to the castle. And then suddenly in the 4th game, he wakes up in a spaceship in space with robots all around. And he does not know, and he is a different person himself. Then he has no memories of anything that happened before, only vague dreams. And you over the course of the game, you kind of figure out what is going on.
Okay. And is the unicorn still there?
Yes, you can see in the trailer that I just saw play that the trailer for Alien Function is now playing. You can see at the end the unicorn makes an appearance in the trailer. So, yep, the unicorn is in the game.
And in terms of length, how long would it take a person to get through one of these adventure games?
It very much depends. I think it depends on experience with playing adventure games. First of all, someone with not as much experience playing this style of game is going to get stuck and take a little longer, probably significantly longer. I have watched videos and seen streams of these games, and I would say I have seen people complete them in 2 or 3 hours. And I have also heard of people taking significantly longer than that to get through them. I would say I intended kind of for maybe 2 hours, but it certainly takes people longer than that sometimes. It depends really on. It really depends on the person how long it's going to take them to get through it. Very, um, it's very different depending on who's playing.
Right. And not sure how much you can speak to things upcoming, but what is next on the adventures of Sir Typhel and his unicorn?
Sure. Well, I can say a little bit. We know I announced the name of it at the end of Alien Function, so that's not a secret. The next game is going to be called Vagabond Starship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to stay in the science fiction setting. And I guess that's probably all I'll say is that we're continuing with the science fiction setting into the next game. And it's going to be a fun, exciting space adventure.
I do really hope so. I mean, with a title like that.
Yes.
And I suppose finally, What is Lutra City Mysteries?
Okay, yeah, Lutra City Mysteries. Oh, well, you asked before if I made any other commercial games before. um, so Lutra City Mysteries was a series of games that I made within Second Life. You're familiar with Second Life?
In principle.
So in Second Life, it has its own scripting language inside the world, and you can create anything that you think up because you can just program and you can build objects and put scripts on them. And so I used that to make games that you play within that world of Second Life. And there are 3 games in that series, as well as 2 free shorter games. So I guess 5 games in the Lutra City Mystery series, but 3 of them uh, are commercial games. So those were before Unicorn Dungeon. So there we go. That there was there were commercial games before Unicorn Dungeon, but you can only play them in Second Life. And oh, go ahead.
No, duly noted.
And so those were very successful. I got featured on the featured locations list on Second Life several times, which are chosen by the staff at Second Life as the best of the best things to do in Second Life. My games were chosen and featured on there almost. I think every single time I released a game, it got featured on there. In fact, I'm sure of it. And so that's what Lucha City Mysteries was. I made a Kickstarter to try to make a non-Second Life version of the games, which would have been more fleshed out than is possible to do in Second Life. Flesh out the world and the characters and make it into an even more full, robust game. But that Kickstarter did not succeed, and that did not happen yet. Who knows? It might happen in the future, but right now the efforts are on the Sir Typho's Tale series.
Fair enough. Right. So I'll see if my colleagues here have any further questions for you.
I think I'm good.
I'm good.
All right.
All right.
Good to know that I'm thorough, so there's no question.
Indeed. Always a help. Anyway, Vance, I would like to thank you for taking time out of your schedule and joining us this evening. We might have you back on the program when Star Vagabond is ready to be talked about in detail.
Vagabond Starship, and yeah,
right.
definitely. That will be later this year, probably at some point. We don't have a release date. We don't even have a Steam page up for it yet. So I'm doing preliminary work on it at the moment, but I expect it to be released this year. That is my intention anyway. But I'm not promising anything yet. I have no release date set. So, but that is what I'm planning.
Fair enough. Fair enough. In the meantime, you can pick up the Sir Typho's Tale series in one bundle for $16.96. That's $15, 15% off. Or if you want to dip your toe in, you can get each individual game for $4.99 each, and they're all available on Steam. And be sure to pick at least one of them up today. Betty, play us to the next segment.
I'll mention as well that if you get that bundle, the 4 games so far are in the bundle. The last 2 will also be in the bundle. So you're gonna, if you get the bundle now, then buying the second 2 is also going to be 15% off, because that's the way Steam bundles work. So you just buy the bundle again, but you only pay for the game that you don't have. So that's going to be 15% off just that one next game. So you're saving on future games as well as the current games if you buy the bundle.
Okay. That is good to know. So, just another incentive to pick up the bundle. Anyway, Petty, once again, play us to the next segment. All right, welcome to the topic of discussion for the week. So this week we are talking about Starfox Adventures. Yeah, we're just coming off of talking about GoldenEye last week, and I think I mentioned it elsewhere that for whatever reason, builds of rare games have been leaking, and we don't know exactly why. I mean, in this case,
aside from there have been multiple leaks over the course of.
Yeah. And, we don't know if any other rareware games from ye olden times will appear. It's like, if we'll get that Super NES, whatever they managed to create out of Killer Instinct 2 before that got canned, among other releases, like maybe we'll see what Saberman Stampede was all about. Like I said, every company has canceled projects and shifted projects and all that stuff. And anyway, so the N64 version of Dinosaur Planet got leaked not too long ago. Significantly, I don't know if we know exactly what build this is, but it's a pretty, it's suspected that this is, potentially as much of the game as was developed before it got axed in favor of the GameCube version. It's like right now the state of release, it's being mined through. So it's known that it's got a significant amount of content. The issue is not all of it is accessible because it being an incomplete build, it is buggy, very volatile even. Like there are certain areas where doing a thing will crash the game.
It's almost like it isn't a completed product.
Yeah. And unlike, say, the Xbox Live Arcade edition of GoldenEye, which was known to be 100% fully complete, just it needed some bug testing before it was ready to go. This is, we don't know how much of the game there is. Like, for example, there were significant differences between the N64 and GameCube versions. The big one is that the N64 Dinosaur Planet was going to be a 2-character game. Yeah, Crystal was originally a playable character and not just like in the intro. And that's where a lot of the locked off content is a question mark, because where like Digital Foundry put out a video about Starfox Adventures, the N64 build, a few days ago, and it showed where the game gets starts falling off during regular accessibility is right when you get her and the start of her adventure. So, and once again, we don't know how much of that is actually intact in the game yet. That's still being mined through and accessed. But we have already learned quite a bit from this particular build. Like chief among them is that the Fox McCloud choice was done much earlier than expected. That is to say, the prevailing wisdom was that Fox, it was changed into a Star Fox game when it made the leap to the GameCube. And it turns out that wasn't true. Fox McCloud was integrated into the N64 version. He's different because he's now a Knight of Lilat, which, whatever that was supposed to be, that is a thing that got scrapped in between platforms. In the GameCube version, he's just Fox McCloud, the leader of Starfox. And also the rest of the crew shows up. We don't know if the crew was intended to appear in the N64 version. We may never know. And there are other differences, like, but there are also a lot of similarities, like striking similarities between certain areas, certain cutscenes, and what's on the finished GameCube version. It's like some of that stuff survived 1-to-1, or as close to one as you could expect.
One to some other thing that looks like a vertical line with maybe a small diagonal line at the top and a flat thing at the bottom.
Something like that. And another key difference was making Starfox Adventures more Star Fox. That is to say, the R-Wing sections were an invention for the GameCube, which is not a surprise. And as far as the N64 version in and of itself, well, it showcases what Rare was able to do with the N64, but it's like, ultimately I'm in agreement that the game was probably best served being a GameCube game. I've said this about other late stage Nintendo 64 games that were produced by Rare. They were like Conker's Bad Fur Day, Perfect Dark. They probably would have been better served as GameCube games. Like Rare was not just pushing the N64 to the limits. I'll be honest, they broke the N64 quite a bit.
Do we need to bring Jet Force Gemini back up?
Perfect Dark. Even though technically you didn't need the expansion pack, you still needed the expansion pack to play most of the game. And on that note, it has been discovered that the N64 version of Dinosaur Planet would have been you would have needed the expansion pack to play it. And
Shocker.
Situations where it needed the extra horsepower because it's not using the high res mode or anything like that, which is just as well.
High res mode probably would have set the 64 on fire.
yeah, because it's got all of the defining traits of an N64 game. It looks pretty spectacular for an N64 game, which means, of course, it means it looks like dog shit today, but that's just how graphics advance. But the key defining feature is it's hitting like fucking 20 FPS.
If you're lucky.
No, if you're lucky, it was 30. But frames per second just wasn't that much of a consideration most of the time in the N64 era. I mean, and it's not just like Rare games, or even late stage Rare games. Fucking GoldenEye had a lot of slowdown. Fucking Ocarina of Time on the 64 had a lot of slowdown. Slowdown was just something you lived with on the N64. Unless you were like F-Zero X, where that was like the Rare game of that era that actually prioritized frame rate over graphics. It's why F-Zero X looks basic as fuck, but has 60 frames per second and has goddamn 30 racers on the screen on the N64. But conversely, if you want to really get a grasp of how big of a leap the GameCube was over the N64, Starfox Adventures is a good candidate because this game goes from being a really nice looking latter day N64 game that's absolutely shredding the frame rate to one of the more impressive, probably one of the most impressive GameCube games ever released graphically. Using a lot of advanced details that Rare was known for, especially like their fur shading. And here's the kicker. It's running all at 60 frames per second.
Damn.
Mm-hmm.
Now some of that is actually, some of that is talent. Like, not every developer is going to be able to do these kind of graphical effects in one place and get it running at 60 frames per second. I mean, shit, that's shit that's hard to do today. But yeah, it's like this is what the GameCube actually brought to the table, and that, like, just the frame rate bump alone, I would say, justified moving this to the N64 from the N64. Sorry. In other regards, making it a Star Fox game was always a bit of contention. Like, and I will still say it's not a good Star Fox game. There have been worse. Oh God, there have been worse these days.
Mm-hmm.
And not just Star Fox Zero. Fucking, like, honestly, Star Fox Assault was worse because its on-foot missions were worse. Because say what you will about Star Fox Adventures not really fitting the platonic idea of Star Fox, its basic gameplay was fine. Rare knew how to do this kind of game, as opposed to Star Fox Assault, which was done by the fucking Ace Combat team of Bandai Namco. You put a team that's well known for their flight games on a flight game that has on-foot sections with a team that doesn't have experience in that field.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
I was gonna say, Ace Combat Team seems like they could make a good normal Star Fox game.
Yeah.
And
they did.
It wasn't the normal one.
Yeah, the R-Wing sections in Star Fox Assault are pretty good.
They are.
Just, when you get to the fucking on-foot sections, they're god-awful. Like, just dull and turgid and, bad. Just bad.
Indeed.
It's the exact same thing that happened with Star Wars Rogue Squadron 3. You had a team that was well versed in space combat. Oh, let's put some fucking on-foot missions to spice up the gameplay. You have no fucking experience and your engine isn't built for that. Yeah, it went about as well.
I was going to defend Zero a little bit, but I'm not going to say it didn't have very large issues.
So. Oh, yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, the biggest problem pertaining to Zero is the fucking controls.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the ones that desperately need a Switch port.
Like, I get the idea of what they were going for with the controls, and the concept is cool, but it's not conducive to gameplay.
Yeah.
Yes. But, yeah, as a game in and of itself, Star Fox Adventures, people seem shocked that this kind of got, lost to the rivers of time for a good long while. I was not surprised. Like, just putting aside the fact that it's not fitting what is in the mold of a Star Fox game, as a Zelda-like, it's pretty shallow. Like, the combat's repetitive, the puzzles are pretty simple, it's got Rare's goddamn collectathon behavior in it. Like,
it was a sickness at this point.
It kind of was, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what made me drop Donkey Kong 64 was that crap. It wasn't too bad in Adventures though. I actually enjoyed Adventures quite a bit.
Yeah, it wasn't the worst in Adventures, but it was still there. I'm like, and just goddamn Prince Tricky. Like, he sucked. Like,
Yeah, the hapless sidekick that you have to protect and occasionally tell to do things is not the optimal sidekick usually.
And while we've gotten insight in on a lot of decisions, I'm still perplexed at what they, the maneuvers that they did with Crystal, because let's not forget, Crystal went from co-protagonist to fucking love interest damsel in distress. Like,
yeah.
If you made Zelda a playable character, then who would Link have to save?
They could make anybody else. I mean,
You-
any other character
Impa?
for that.
I forget if it was that argument or if it was if you made Link a girl, why would he need to save Zelda or something like that? There was some dumb argument that someone in an official place made about why Link wasn't a girl or Zelda wasn't playable in one of the games or something.
right, and this is arguably worse because Zelda's never been a playable character in any of the main games.
Yeah, I was about to say.
She's never been a co-playable character.
Outside
the closest you get is I was gonna say the closest you get is Spirit Tracks, and then it's like Ghost Zelda moving armors around for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that technically counts, but like this is like we were going to make Zelda playable in fucking say Twilight Princess for the GameCube, but we moved it to the Wii, and now she's back in her usual role. Like, it's just bad crickets.
Yeah.
And I thought that back in 2002. Like, and I swear, and that's another thing that worked against Starfox Adventures. It was clearly a bit rushed there at the end because they had to get the game out before they were sold off to Microsoft. Like, now as far as the final battle goes, and there are people who didn't like the fact that the game was basically hijacked by Andros. I'm like, so here's the thing.
Which, like, fair. That is kind of dumb, but also, like, what else would it have been?
Well, that's the thing. We do know the final boss encounter of the N64 version, and this was always going to be a thing. Like, General Scales was always going to be absorbed by... In the N64 version, I think it's like a stone head with hands.
Oh, one of the Kazoa god things.
Yeah, something like that. So that particular bit of stupidity was always there. It's just in this one, it's like instead of some, generic Krazoa, whatever the fuck they were going for there, it's like it's Andros again. Which, honestly, in those terms, is actually an upgrade. It's just, the dumb part was doing the hijacking in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's kind of like, say, Final Fantasy IV syndrome, only worse. Because you didn't even give a fucking chance for it. But I suppose in this case, because it's Andros and, Fox's arch enemy, it's understood much better than, the 64 version. Though, I suppose, on the other hand, we don't know the context of the 64 version. Like, if this is something that was going to be explained elsewhere.
Yeah, the Krazoas are mentioned in the Dinosaur Planet beta at the beginning there. Something about that they're for the battle that nearly destroyed the universe or something like that. So that might have been some more story on that later on.
with Andros, it's Andros. We kind of know his deal, which is why they can shorthand it.
Admittedly, it's bog standard. Hello, I am the evil scientist. I am doing evil science and want to rule the thing.
All of the thing.
Anyway, will another rare project leak? Only time will find out. Until then, that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. As always, be sure to tune in after this program for Last News Desk on the Left on Mac's channel, but the week ahead. So coming up on Friday, March 12th, we'll be having Arturo Perez and Ana Marie Wirral Barthomeos, that is a surname, of Kluge Interactive. They are the publishers and co-developers on a VR game called Synth Riders. It's kind of like Beat Sabers meets Audio Surf. Meets New Wave Retro. Now, I've seen some footage. It looks interesting. It's just nobody here has a VR rig yet. So it's going to just be video footage. Then again, even if I don't think we would want to hook Petty up to a VR kit. Anyway, coming up on the Sunday reviews, we'll be having reviews of Shot in the Dark, which is I guess the best way to put it is a hybrid, like 8-bit platformer and light gun game. Cultist Simulator Initiate Division for this is what the Galax has been playing, and you got the Nintendo Switch version. So
yep,
you got Freddy Spaghetti, which is Petty's game for the week. Surprisingly literal that title is, as you play a strand of spaghetti named Freddy. Like,
do you get to turn into a flying monster near the end of the game?
Not a flying monster, but you do become a giant kaiju during the midpoint. I played up to the third section, and then I just kind of got bored. Twilight will be handling Kaiju Big Battle Fight Fantasy. I'm not going to pronounce this fucking broken Japanese shit. This is an RPG starring kaiju. Hopefully it's better than like the actual like most of the Godzilla games. There's just a weird history and desire with like the older Godzilla games and turning them into strategy games. But I never got that.
Me neither.
But anyway, until either Friday or about a half an hour from now, we shall wish you good gaming.